Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is well and safe this September 9th, 2021. It was 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and I was sitting in my office on the fourth floor of Conklin Hall at Rutgers University, Newark. I was 3 months newly hired as the director of the Upper Bound program, a pre-college program to assist high school students with their college application process. We were planning a college tour on Saturday to NYU. I was listening to the radio station when the radio personalities deviated from their daily program and said a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. Where were you when you heard and or learned about the events of 9/11? My name is Sharon Stroy. I am the director in the Office of Public Engagement in the School of Public Affairs and Administration at Rutgers University, Newark. Yes, 20 years later, and I'm still here in a different role with different students and actually adjusting to a different world event. At this time, to offer welcome and greetings, I would like to introduce Charles Benefiel, the Dean of the School of Public Affairs and Administration.
Thank you, Director Stroy. I am delighted to be here today to honor those who perished, as well as those who survived, and those who had family and friends who may have been injured and or died in that incident. I too recall vividly exactly where I was and what I was doing at that time, and I can relate those events to the T today. I'm very happy that we have 3 people here with us today, Anthony, Michael, and Margarita, to talk about those events and how it has manifested itself 20 years later. Who would have thought that today we will be going through something similar, another killer of sorts, that's having an even more profound impact on us. And we will also remember March of 2020 the same way that we remember 9/11. If you think about it, there's a group of people that are alive today that weren't alive then. They only have seen pictures. And, you know, I think about over the course of my life, there's only been 3 events that I can vividly remember. I was in high school when the space shuttle crashed in '85. I remember when Princess Diana was killed in a car accident. And I know exactly what I was doing for all 3 events. So I'm very excited and very interested to see what will be told today. I welcome you to our SPAA family. I appreciate your taking time out of your schedules to talk to us, to talk to our students, our staff, and our faculty. This is one of those events that we need to remember and we need to highlight, because it was a very pivotal moment in what this country has become. So welcome again. Please reach out to us anytime if we can ever be of service to you. We consider ourselves a family, and the family is far reaching. So thank you for returning home for some of you.
Thank you, Charles. I would like to share briefly a short video.
You're watching Today in New York, a live look at Lower Manhattan from the Liberty Science Center. Beautiful look at the World Trade Center on a Sunday morning. And there, the 9/11 Museum is spearheading an effort to have the events and consequences of that terrible day taught in schools across the country. Now, for those of us who lived through it, it might seem hard to believe, but there is now an entire generation with no living memorial in memory of that day in September. News 4's Linda Beccaro has the story.
Musician John Legend vows we will never break. And 20 years after 9/11, he promises to never forget people like Harvey Gardner, who was at work in the Twin Towers that fateful day.
He was 10 years older than me, so in a lot of ways he was like a dad. He helped raise me, he helped me buy my first car.
Anthony, who lives in Verona, is now helping spread the word about the Never Forget Fund, offering classroom lesson plans, teacher training, and public events to ensure that the next generation, people like Harvey Gardner's 18-year-old niece, never forget.
Things are always going to happen. So if we don't try to be the best that we can be and learn as much about the past, to try to fix what happened in retrospect, then there's really no point.
For them, this is not a memory. This is history to be learned.
This 9/11 memorial in Valhalla is called The Rising, meant to honor the victims of that day and also how we came together as a community immediately after.
New York was a very different place in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. There was palpable expressions of compassion and active empathy.
The director of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum says the Never Forget campaign carries lessons for current events.
Horrible things happen when things that you couldn't imagine take place, like a pandemic, for example, that it is those 9/12 attributes that will see you through.
Come together again to make sure that Leah's children and their children will always know these stories and draw inspiration from them.
Linda Beccaro, News 4, New York.
Lest we forget. And still ahead this morning, one last look at your forecast with Matt Brickman. We do have a heat wave on.
It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Margarita Gravesandy. Margarita currently serves as the customer service specialist at Permarel Glass. The company services clients in the pharmaceutical, spirit well, and cosmetic industry. Ms. Gravesandy serves as a volunteer in our community by supporting high schools to pursue a post-secondary education, coaching parents through the college and financial aid process, and connecting resources to support students during the college process. She is a community partner to SPAA. Because of her volunteer efforts, several students from Franklin Township have enrolled and/or graduated from the School of Public Affairs and Administration. Margarita believes that everyone has the ability to give back to their community. She has volunteered with the School of Public Affairs and Administration, Franklin Food Bank by sorting canned goods and providing bags of food to people in need, and Elijah Promise, a nonprofit organization where they conduct job training, community gardening, community-focused nutrition classes, and prepare meals and food bags for the community. Ms. Gravesandy was the Director of Customer Service for ADP Brokerage Financial Services on September 11th, 2001, where her office was located 4 blocks from the World Trade Center. She remained with ADP until 2005, and in her reflections about the day, she recalled the service of strangers who assisted her in leaving the scene and returning to her family in New Jersey. When you take on the role of being a public servant or public administrator, you provide service to strangers. Margarita graduated from Centenary University with a business degree and feels her biggest achievement has been raising 4 amazing children and an honor to raise her nephew as well. I'm gonna allow Ms. Gravesandy to give some opening remarks for about 5 minutes before we introduce our other panelists. Margarita Gravesandy.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sharon. Thank you all for allowing me to share my story through my lens. Thank you to the dean, the faculty, the student, the other panelists. I appreciate it. It is an honor. 2001, where was I? I was actually downtown Newark. I received notice that I needed to get into the office early. I got on the PATH train heading towards the World Trade Center. Unfortunately, I wanted a seat because anyone who has traveled down in the World Trade, going into the World Trade Center, know that everyone stands up and pretty much you're fighting to try to get a seat. That morning was a beautiful day and I just wanted to sit. So I stepped on the train and then for some reason I stepped off the train. I believe that stepping off, my grandfather was with me, telling me just to be still. Nevertheless, I wound up getting back on the train, but my train did not enter into the World Trade Center. Instead, it stopped somewhere around, I guess it was 6th Avenue. They call it Christopher Street or 9th Avenue. Nevertheless, we got off the train and to my surprise, first tower had, got hit. And we were just in disbelief because we didn't know what was happening. There was so much of chaos, but everyone was together that time. And we thought that a private plane actually went into the World Trade Center. We didn't think a commercial plane that did this. So everyone was saying that a plane just hit the World Trade Center. But no one was panicking, no one was scared because we thought we didn't have a reason to be scared. Then all of a sudden, we're sitting there, we're talking, we're looking, and we're praying that people get out because we saw the first tower that was already hit. We heard the ambulance, we heard firefighters, police. It was so much noise going towards the World Trade Center. And in a matter of time, we saw the second plane, and that second plane did something to everyone that was standing there. There was an immediate shift because it came with force. And we knew the world was changing at that point. People was just hugging each other, trying to support each other to figure out what had happened and why it was happening. We didn't know what was going on. All we knew was that we seen that plane, how it came, the force, and we knew that there was a lot of lives that's going to be lost. And people was trying to reach other loved ones. And for some strange reason, my Nextel was working. It didn't work for me, but it was working for everyone else. I loaned it out to a woman who was trying to get her son. He was working for Cantor Fitzgerald. She was able to reach him. He said, "Mom, I'm heading out the building." She just said, "Keep walking, keep walking." I let another woman call her son. And I never thought to call my own family because I don't know, it was just so many people looked scared. And not that I wasn't scared, because I was, but for some reason you jump into help mode and you don't realize that you're doing it because you've done it all the time. And people was just in a sense of confusion at that moment, but we were together. That's the only time I felt people connecting with other people, different races, different ethnicity, different people, just trying to help people. And we all walked towards getting ready to turn around and walk towards St. Vincent Hospital. And that's when the one towel fell. We stood there with our mouths dropped, and then the other one fell. And at that moment, we was silent and crying and trying to comfort one another. And in the midst of all that, you still see the ambulance and the firefighters all going towards there. All I can say on that day is that we have to honor all those that have lost their lives. We have to honor all those that have lost their lives after that because of the air quality and trying to get into the rescue of the people. All the service dogs that lost their lives, okay? Everyone on that day that was in service, the police officers, the firefighters, the nurses that was working overtime at St. Vincent Hospital, which was a trauma center, people standing there trying to give blood out. Everyone was trying to do so much to help out another person. I believe my takeaway, and being a person who likes to give, that we always have to make sure we are allowing people to share their story as they want to share it. We allow people to experience whatever they are experiencing through their lens, and for us to maybe say less and be more compassionate, because we never know who we might be sharing or talking about, or something we're speaking about that might be impacting another person. And if I can say anything to our SPAA, to the SPAA undergrads as well as the grad students, is that we show compassion to all, we honor all. Because we never know when our day is going to end. So we have to give, expecting not a return, and we have to be accountable and reliable to all, period. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Margarita, and thank you for your authenticity. I would like to introduce Michael A. Brown. Michael A. Brown helps whole of society representatives form partnerships to establish and expand local prevention frameworks that prevent targeted violence and terrorism through technical, financial, and educational assistance. Since 2016, he has held various leadership roles on the CP3 team and its predecessor's organization, managing cross-functional initiatives to advance policy, strategy, research, and programs. The topic of terrorism and targeted violence prevention is a personal one to Michael, whose father died on September 11th, 1985, following a terrorist attack in Madrid, Spain. Michael is currently working in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, Associate Director for Field Operations West. During the past 14 years, Michael has served in several collaborative roles for DHS. He has built and strengthened relationships with industry, community, academic, international, interagency, intelligence, and law enforcement representatives. Prior to joining CP3, Michael was a research fellow at the RAND Corporation, branch chief for the Air Domain Intelligence Integration and Analysis Center, Transportation Security Administration representative, and dual hat DHS attaché at the U.S. Embassy Singapore, as well as liaison officer, desk officer, inspector, and analysis. Before joining the federal government, Michael worked in government consulting as well as state and city government, and began his career as a financial management officer. Michael is a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security, and is a founding member of the school's HSS Advanced Thinking and Homeland Security program. He holds a master's degree in public administration from Rutgers University, Newark, and a bachelor's degree in business administration from George Washington University. A native of Delran, New Jersey, Michael lives in California with his wife and 3 daughters, and is a passionate fan of Philadelphia sports team. A special note, Michael and I attended classes together in completing our MPA degree. It is my pleasure to introduce Michael A. Brown.
Karen, thank you so much for the kind introduction. Dean Benefiel, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Margarita, thank you for sharing your story. It's an honor to be here with you and Anthony as well. I'm really excited to be here, Sharon. Hearing from you was really the highlight of I call this anniversary season. As you mentioned, I lost my dad in a terrorist attack on September 11th, but 16 years before 9/11/01, on September 11th, 1985. In September 11th, 2001, I was actually September 10th, 2001, the night before 9/11/01, I lit a candle in my home, as I do every year, to honor my father's life as part of my Jewish tradition. it's called a yard site candle. It's a 24-hour candle. And I said to my then wife of 1 year, I said, you know what, I'm going to go in early tomorrow on September 11th, 2001. I'm 25 years old. I really would like to meet up with the guy who worked at the bank that I was at. And his name was Jim Calstrom. And Jim Calstrom was a retired FBI guy who ran the New York City office for the FBI. I had no government experience. I had no interest in public administration. I didn't even know what public administration was that day. But I went in and I said, you know what, it's 16 years since my father's passed away, and I'd like to see what I can do to help fight terrorism, but not in the traditional guns, gates, and guards type of security that I think the Department of Homeland Security is known for. And by the way, I should offer a disclosure. I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'm not speaking as I'm speaking on my own behalf today. I'm not speaking as a representative of the Department of Homeland Security. I'm just speaking as Michael Brown, alumni, Rutgers, Newark, 2005. Sorry about the, one second. But what I wanted to say is I went into the office of this gentleman and I said, sir, I've been in a couple meetings with you. I'd like to fight terrorism. I don't know how to do it. What can I do? And he said, you know, your dad would be really proud. My story just felt very alone. In fact, you know, I had known about terrorism since I was a 9-year-old boy, but as of 6:30 in the morning on 9/11/01, there were anecdotal stories that really those afflicted knew, specifically whether it was the USS Cole, or whether it was the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania, or whether it was in Oklahoma City in 1995. So I'd been following terrorism as a student for most of my life, but really it seemed like a very small club of which I was a member. And then I left Jim Calstrom's office at 7 o'clock in the morning. And he said, stay in touch. And then at 8:46, the first plane was hit. And I remember running into his office and his secretary said, he's not available right now. He's on the phone with Peter Jennings of ABC News, is the former FBI guy taking all the calls to talk about what's happening right there. A month later, Jim Calstrom had left the bank to go work for then Governor Pataki, standing up the state of New York's Homeland Security office. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how I could help. My best friend and I were on the phone. We were asking, do we join the military like Pat Tillman, who was an NFL player and decided to leave the NFL. He was born the same year I was, 1976, and he got into, join the Special Forces. My best friend was a doctor at UMDNJ, and he put on his scrubs and he took a ferry across to Manhattan, ready to help at a hospital. But people either went home or they perished that day. And sadly, he didn't know what to do either. I wanted to take a class in something, but I didn't know where to fit. And that's where Rutgers Newark came in. And I really meant what I said at the start of this call. I'm really delighted to be here because I owe my foundation to that. When SPAA was not a SPAA, when SPAA was a department, when Sharon and I were in class with some new teacher named Suzanne Piotrowski, who I hear is still there now all these years later. But she was very helpful to help me understand the foundation of government, talking about the political, the legal, the bureaucratic elements of public administration. And that foundation really helped me separate an understanding of politics versus government. And I'm really proud to have gotten into government. And I didn't know where I was going to end up. I applied everywhere from the Panera in Hoboken, where I was living, trying to find a job in the months after. My wife gave birth to our first child in 2004. I was in the program in 2004 and 2005. And so I was a stay-at-home dad, pushing a stroller by day, trying to find a job by afternoon, and in class at Rutgers by night. And really just set up a series of informational interviews with anybody I could meet. I would read about a nonprofit like what Anthony is working on right now. There was an organization then at the time, Families of September 11th. There's other organizations, Tuesday's Children, that were all formed in the wake of 9/11. And I just reached out to organizations to try to understand where I could find my space. Ultimately, I tried to pivot from my banking days in Newark. I was working at MB&A, credit card bank in Newark, and I left that field. But I figured maybe I can get a budgeting job and find some way to link my private sector interest into the public sector. Here we are now, 20 years after 9/11. I've now been a federal employee with the Department of Homeland Security for the past 15 years, and really have found a lot of fulfillment. My first job being with TSA, serving in a writing role, taking that shiny MPA degree out for a drive to use my writing skills from the program. And I'm very indebted to the program at Rutgers, and it's a real delight to be here today. I'm sure all of us could go on for hours about the value of the degree program that was there, and also from our personal experiences. But I will tell you, when I joined the program, I'll close with this, I never felt that I fit in, because the program really attracted a very diverse group of students from, and when I say diverse, I mean by fields. I'm talking about education and social work and business, and just from all over the place. I think there might have been one other student that was kind of tied to what was a new industry called Homeland Security. And I just kept on meeting people and interviewing people and staying after class and talking to faculty and really just trying to learn from others. But ultimately, it's been a very fulfilling road. Even though I've left Jersey many years ago, it still holds a very close place in my heart. So thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to further questions.
Thank you, Michael. A pleasure for me as well. Our next panelist is Anthony Gardner. He is a public administration professional who has worked on 9/11 related issues since 2001. In honor of his brother Harvey, who was killed in the terrorist attack, he founded the September 11th Education Trust, the World Trade Center United Family Group in the immediate aftermath. He served as an advisor on the 9/11 Memorial and Memorial Museum planning efforts, and as a consultant party in the World Trade Center Section 106 process. Mr. Gardner was a vocal advocate for the preservation of the footprints of the World Trade Center Twin Towers, which now serve as the setting for the 9/11 Memorial Museum primary exhibitions. In February 2020, Mr. Gardner joined the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund as its Director of Communications and External Affairs. And in this capacity, he develops and manages outreach and communication activities to build awareness about the program and engage the 9/11 community. Before joining the VCF, Mr. Gardner served as the Senior Vice President of Government and Community Affairs at the National September 11th Memorial Museum. In this role, he developed and managed a broad range of public and government affairs initiatives that advance the 9/11 Memorial and Museum relations with the members of the 9/11 community, government officials, entities, and furthest educational mission. Mr. Gardner holds an MA in Museum Studies and a certificate in Nonprofit Management, both from Seton Hall University, and a master's degree in Public Administration from Rutgers University School of Public Affairs Administration. Mr. Gardner currently serves on several boards, including the One Pulse Foundation Chairman's Ambassador Council. I want to thank Jane Sharp, who is a SPAA alum as well, and my Rutgers colleague for connecting me to Anthony Gardner to join us here this evening. I'd introduce Anthony.
Thank you, Sharon. I'd like to thank Jane as well for suggesting me. I'm so humbled to be a part of this panel with Margarita and Michael, and to have had the opportunity to hear their stories. It's amazing. As involved as I've been in 9/11 over these last 2 decades, I'm always meeting new people that have perspectives and stories that I've never heard before. And it's so interesting when you hear them tell their stories. It's just this recognition that, we're united in this experience, that while we may have had individual experiences of the event, whether we lost a loved one or not, this is a part of our national heritage and our story. And just interesting, hearing Michael, he mentioned when he was 25 years old. I was 25 years old too. And, it's hard to believe, it's 20 years since, and I don't know where the time has gone, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my brother Harvey, who was killed that day, and just talk a little bit about my role post 9/11 in his honor. So with that, should I bring up those slides real quick? I just have a few visuals that I wanted to share with everyone. Okay. I'd also like to thank Dean Benefiel as well for this opportunity to engage with the SPAA family. It's been long overdue for me, so I appreciate that. Very quickly, the anniversary each year, every year, my family and we visit the World Trade Center site and attend the ceremony that takes place there. We've always felt close to my brother there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why. Specifically, we journey there each year and we make a pilgrimage there because to us it's sacred ground and a sacred site. This is just a quick post that I did last year. Somebody just happened to put a sticker under my brother's name there on the memorial pools. I'm proud to be an American, and it was something that brought so much comfort to me and my family that day because that's who Harvey was. He was only 35 years old on 9/11, but he was wise beyond his years. And that's a picture of him here. He practiced martial arts and had a passion and interest in American history. In fact, on September 10th, 2001, he was watching a documentary on World War II. I mean, that's literally the last thing he did before he went to bed that night. The next morning, just hours later, he used to wake up very early because he lived at the Jersey Shore, and he would had a long commute into Lower Manhattan to the World Trade Center. And he stayed up to finish watching that documentary. It cost him some sleep that night, but he left his house that morning of September 11th at 5 a.m., never to return, and completely unaware, obviously, that the hours before when he was watching that documentary on World War II, that he was about to become a part of that history that he cherished in his life. But despite the passage of 2 decades, we hold him so close in our hearts. And you saw that quick clip of my oldest daughter, Leah, who is an undergraduate student as well, just started college 2 weeks ago. So she's, one of your peers. And she's learned about her uncle over the years from the stories we've told her. But in the immediate aftermath, like so many families, we were desperate for information. We were able to get one call into Harvey that morning. He worked on the 83rd floor of the North Tower. That was the first tower that was hit that morning. The plane that was crashed into his building was actually 10 stories below. 10 stories above where Harvey was. It breached on the 93rd floor and above. And so even though they were below the point of impact, their exits were compromised. And on this one call that we made to him shortly after 9 a.m., we could hear him comforting his colleagues, some of whom were beginning to panic in the background. And Margarita touched on this during her very beautiful reflection about that day and the compassion that people showed. And so often we think about, and I wholeheartedly agree, that one of the most important lessons from 9/11 is the importance of public service in putting others before ourselves, in that sense of unity that we had and shared purpose. There were no races that day. There was no divisions between us. We were one. And so we often think about 9/11 and that outpouring of volunteers and service, which is so inspiring, that happened in the days and weeks that followed. But that sense of spirit and compassion was evident on 9/11, whether it was the actions of eyewitnesses and survivors like Margarita, who were below the towers as the events unfolded, or as the events were unfolding in my brother's office, where people gave their phones, what little time they had left in this world, they gave their phones so that their coworkers can call loved ones and say goodbye. And it's, for 20 years, I've told these stories, and they never diminish in terms of their power and their impact. They really convey the actions of these individuals that day, and in the aftermath really just convey the best of who we are. 9/11 was the result of the worst of humanity, but but the best of humanity responded to it in the actions of the people we lost that day and those who came, who were witness to it, and those who came to serve and help others in need. So in the immediate aftermath, I like so many family members, put Harvey's face on a missing poster. Actually, you'll see there too, there's a young woman there, Joyce Carpenetto, who was my brother's dear friend and coworker who was with him that day. So our logic was, if we can find Joyce, if somebody has information about Joyce, we'll find Harvey. And I mentioned we had the one call that we got through to him, and an hour and a half later, his tower collapsed, and we weren't able to ever get a call back, a second call in. So we had no knowledge about whether or not they were finally able to get out of the tower before it collapsed. This just gives you a sense of the devastation that day. The 16-acre site was reduced to a 7-story smoldering pile, something like 2,700 vertical square feet of wreckage. And it took rescue workers 9 months to clear the site. I wanted to just share, because we're about to commemorate the 20th anniversary, I wanted to share with you a picture from one of the first anniversary ceremonies that took place at Ground Zero, also known as the World Trade Center site. And you see the massive construction ramp in the background. And in the beginning, in those early years, when the site had been cleared, we family members and officials had the opportunity to go down to bedrock. It was a space that we felt was sacred. It's where the Twin Towers were anchored into the earth. Was the demarcation of where the tower stood and where our loved ones lived and where they died. And so it was important for us to make that pilgrimage every year. So I just wanted to share a couple of these images that convey the power of that level of the site. So what happened in the years following 9/11 was this recognition by family members where we were working to convince officials who were charged with the redevelopment process to preserve the physical remnants of the World Trade Center site, and namely the footprints of the towers. And so you see me there crouched down, touching one of the box columns. And these box columns actually delineate and outline the tower footprints at the bedrock level of the site. And as soon as we learned that these archaeological vestiges existed, we really started to compare them to the strafing marks in the concrete and Pearl Harbor, to the battlefields of Gettysburg, and advocating for their preservation. So I wasn't very civic minded prior to 9/11 and the aftermath. And I just sort of learned through the process about the importance of, when you are passionate about something, do everything you can, no matter how daunting it may seem, whatever policy issue you care about or public issue that's of concern or charitable cause, fight for what you believe in, because we were ultimately successful. It was a preservation effort that spanned nearly a decade. It was controversial, it was painful at times. We forged a lot of relationships over those years with elected officials. You see me there with President Obama, members of the community, other family members, other survivors and rescue and recovery workers, and joining together to advocate for issues that were important to us. So the last thing I just want to talk about quickly is the memorial process, because it was a redevelopment process that was managed by elected officials and other government officials. And I thought it would be particularly interesting to our students and our other members of the SPAA family, given who we are and the work that we do in our courses of study. So this is just a quick image of the Libeskind land use design. There was 2 public memorial design processes that informed the ultimate creation of the 9/11 Memorial Museum that we have today. The first was Governor Pataki directed an organization called the LMDC, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. It was equal representation of Governor Pataki and then Mayor Giuliani and then Mayor Bloomberg at the time. I served as a member of the Family Advisory Council on the LMDC. So I was very active in the memorial planning efforts from the beginning. And this is Liebeskin's land use design that was ultimately selected here. And you can see it actually doesn't look very different from what we have today. But despite Liebeskin's plan and the subsequent memorial design that followed, that was selected in 2004 as a result of a international design competition, there was still uncertainty about how much of the footprints of the towers would be preserved. And our families called for the preservation of the towers, as we said at the time, from bedrock to infinity. Again, bedrock where those box columns, where the vestiges of the building were anchored and still existed, anchored in the earth. And you see me there during some of those press conferences and rallies. And this is a quick cross section of the final designs where we were able to preserve the footprints of the towers at bedrock as represented by the memorial design. And then in terms of the museum experience, the museum is mainly an underground exhibition space where if you haven't visited, you enter at street level and then you journey down 7 stories below the memorial pools to the actual physical remains of the tower footprints. And here are some design renderings. We worked through a process called the Section 106 process. It was a federal review process that was triggered because redevelopment officials were using federal dollars in part to redevelop the site. So it triggered Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. It required this consultative Section 106 process. And that was our mechanism as family members to be actively involved, to fight for the maximum preservation of those footprints of the towers, because we wanted them not only for the community, but for future generations to be able to experience them and make the pilgrimage to sacred ground that we were able to make in those early years. So these are some renderings of some of the mitigation plans that we negotiated. This is an image of the museum today. If you visit the museum today, the physical remains of the towers, the box columns that outline the footprints of the towers actually serve as the settings for the museum's primary exhibitions. So you'll be able to experience those today. One of my many rally signs from those efforts, from those days, is actually preserved and on view in the Memorial Museum's historical exhibit. So you can see that there. And this is my brother Harvey. His floppy disk is actually on view in the memorial exhibition. And it's, obviously a great relic of the past. Those of us old enough on the call to actually know what a floppy disk is, used to save files on them, before UBS drives and whatnot. And what's special about that floppy disk is that it's actually the floppy disk that contains Harvey's resume that he used to get his position at General Telecom. So, just in closing, again, one of the greatest lessons from 9/11 is the importance of civic participation and engagement in public service and in putting others before ourselves. We see that through the brave actions of the rescue and recovery workers, who many today are now suffering from illnesses, along with survivors who were exposed to toxins in the aftermath of 9/11. So, I would really encourage everyone in this program to keep that commitment to public service and to always fight for and champion for the causes that you are passionate about, and to learn and use the lessons that you learn through the SPAA program and apply those to your life. That's certainly what I was blessed to have the opportunity to do that, and to channel those lessons learned into action in honor and in memory of my brother Harvey. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen. And there we go.
Thank you, Anthony.
My pleasure.
You answered some of my questions. However, I do have one question. Here we are, 20 years, remembering 9/11, the aftermath of 9/11, how it has shaped, changed, or altered our trajectory, whether personal, professional, and just in our family lives. But we are also on the heels and still kind of dealing with another tragedy. Here we are, COVID-19, trying to recover, repopulate, return. This week is my first week in the office since March of 2020. What would you say to our students, the next generation of leaders who need to pick up the mantle of advocating for families, deciding to enter into government versus politics? What would you say to those that believe in service and do it every day, as Margarita so eloquently stated, to the leaders who will need to move us past a global pandemic?
Did you want me to take the
It's
first shot
open.
at that?
It's open to anyone. Go
Sure.
ahead.
I think, looking to 9/11, 9/11 was not this static event that happened 20 years ago. The repercussions are ongoing. The stories of resilience, the stories of service have the power to inspire the generations that come. So I would always encourage, our next generation of SPAA leaders to continue to always look to the past, to look to history, to find inspiration. We got knocked down on 9/11. It was our darkest hour as a nation, and we got back up together. We were united for a long time afterwards, and it's hard to believe that, given such the divided world that we live in today. But I would just urge them to look to that we have that capacity, and to draw inspiration from that, to help them to do the important work that lies ahead for them.
I would add on there that connection matters, whether it's because of the pandemic, whether it's because of terrorism. People need people. And the unity that Anthony was talking about was definitely the beauty that we felt. We're still going through this pandemic right now, and relationships matter, and hard conversations have to be had. And so because of the division that exists around the country right now, what's really critical is that we continue to connect. We're being tested right now, just like we were being tested then. I'm a little old school, but I pick up the phone. The text doesn't do it. And if I see something on social media, and yes, I do use social media, if I see something I disagree with or I'm uncomfortable with, I make a phone call and I say, "Are you doing okay?" I've learned that being a victim of terrorism. I've lost my dad when I was 9 years old, and doesn't matter if I talk to you every day and I see something uncomfortable and I address you, or if you're an alumni from a Rutgers program from 15 years ago. If I see something, I'll make the phone call, Sharon. And I think that's why we've stayed in touch. It's been loose, but it's always been there. And connection matters. And I think that's going to be where we get our strength.
I would say the same thing. Anthony, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything you continue to do. My heart goes out to you and your family for your loved one. Michael, what you said was really, it came back home, because you said that you actually, when you were younger, went door to door asking, what can I do? You went into your professors. What can I do? You lend a hand to whatever needed to be done. That's called connection. That's called research. That's called doing your job. And I would say to all the SPAA students that's getting ready to graduate or just entering into the program, connect. You guys are at the best place at the right time. You have so much of resources right in your hand. All you have to do is maybe do a little bit less of the social and do more listening, and listening not just with our ears, but with our heart, because sometimes people need your support that might not come out and say it like you said, Michael. So it's so important that we start being more compassionate and being more accountable to everything that we do, because there's so much service that's needed. There's so much of things and resources that is right in our hand in Newark. It is so much that we can do. So take up everything that the panelists have said. The connection is key. Go knock on those doors. Go see what you can do. Don't stop. Keep doing, keep at it, and you'll be able to come out on top.
Marguerite, I love your point. Listen with the heart. I've tried to operate that way, but I've never heard it presented that way. And that's an approach that I really have tried to take. And, you know, for what it's worth, I think for everybody listening on this call today and, you know, the recorded version in the future, you know, I'm available if anybody wants to call and, you know, just have a conversation about where do I go next. I'm not sure. You know, I've been a Fed now for 14 years and I'm still making those calls. I don't know, you know, I'm not the 25-year-old kid that I was 20 years ago. I'm a 45-year-old guy now, and I'll be a 65-year-old guy in 20 more years. So, but I'm still trying to make relationships and figure stuff out. So, but I'm available to have conversations with anybody that shows an interest, because people have been good to me along the way to offer that in return.
If I could just add quickly too, I think it relates well to what Michael and Marguerite are saying. Just this, it reminded me about my brother Harvey. He had this interest in recognition of the importance of lifelong learning. Like he always, like he never felt like he was an expert in anything. He just had this passion and interest to learn new things. And so that I think is another important takeaway for me, and that I would suggest that you all sort of apply that to your own lives as well. Like, just no matter how old you are, whether you're an old fart like me at 45 or or 85 years old, you could always learn something new and find a new passion and connect. Connection is just so key.
Absolutely. It's just, you know, as for the SPAA alum, I think part of the reason why I decided to join was because of my relationships with Michael and classmates. And yes, Suzanne Piotrowski had just started working, and we were in class together, and she's still here 15 years later, as we celebrate this year the 15 years of the School of Public Affairs being a school, and looking forward to another 15 years and doing whatever we possibly can do. But one of the things that I think has always grounded us, it has something to do with our values: diversity, knowledge, ethics, service, and competence. So if you had to pick one, Margarita, Anthony, Michael, which one would you pick is the one that, if we can say one's more important than the other, or is that even possible? Which value holds near and dear to you?
I don't think it's fair to rack and stack them.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I'll just amplify one, and I think I said it in my opening, is just the diversity of experiences, diversity of thought, diversity of context, diversity of background, geographical diversity. You know, since leaving Hoboken, I've lived in Virginia, Maryland, Singapore, California. I've been able to meet people where they are, and I realized that the program that Rutgers Newark offered me, people were able to meet me where I was. And because of some of the influences along the way, I could kind of shape that academic experience into one to get the outcomes that I needed. Not necessarily because there were, you know, Homeland Security professionals in the program, but because, and in fact, that probably made me better because there were not, and it really shaped some of my perspective, as it was a new field at the time and it was trying to figure itself out. But the diversity of opinions and diversity of thought is always important, especially in this social media world, or this, you know, world of echo chambers where we all hear, you know, what we want to hear. Well, sometimes you got to hear what you don't want to hear. We saw what happened, following the George Floyd murder, that, there were camps that were pro law enforcement or pro social justice. Well, you don't have to be one or the other. You can find ways to thread that needle and to have healthy discussions on hard discussions like race, like justice, like issues that people tend to revert into their echo chambers for, but the real progress happens in the gray space where we don't really have all the solutions. And I think a multidisciplinary lens is going to do us best moving forward.
I agree. I think what you said, the diversity of thought, I like that one, because if you get the diversity of thought, you're getting everyone's different opinion. And getting everyone's opinion actually helps, in my opinion, move a lot of things forward, this country forward. It also would help if we had that, because it would be able to show empathy and sympathize with people that don't look like us or may not agree with what we think or how we behave. But getting everyone in a room that looks different, and that's why the SPAA is like so wonderful, because they are able to capitalize on people that look different, think different, and those ideas, those thoughts are the ones that moves us forward. So I would say what you said, Michael, I would say diversity of thought.
Anthony.
Yeah, and again, like disclaimer, not ranking any sort of as more important than the other. I mean, the one that resonates with me so much that I think is, most sort of embodied by our responses to 9/11 is service. Margarita said it earlier so well, just this idea that when we put others before ourselves, it leads to so many incredible things. It leads to empathy. It leads to unity. It leads to understanding. And that is a lesson I learned from my brother. It's a lesson that I learned through the efforts over the years to honor him and all the victims. It's a lesson that is embodied in the actions of the responders and the survivors who gave so much. And the one thing I do want to say quickly is that in interacting with those individuals over the years, I've met people who were terminally ill because of their service at Ground Zero. And time again, and I'm thinking of a late firefighter named Ray Pfeiffer, who advocated on behalf of other responders and survivors for medical care, monitoring, and compensation benefits. He said that he would do it all over again. Here's a man that faced the end of his life. He was denied the ability to see, his children were, only in their 20s. He was married. He had a happy life. And yet he said that he would do it again, knowing what the outcome would be. And when you think about people like that who embody service, it's a reflection of the best of who we are and what we're capable of becoming. And so that's why for me, when I think of service, the heart of what service is, and that's that selflessness. And if we could all be a little less selfish, I think our world could be a lot better.
As we could be here for another hour, our time has come to an end. So for me personally, to Margarita and Michael, who I've known, I want to thank you. Thank you. Anthony, you are now welcome into my family. This is your SPAA alum. And so I'm so grateful to Jane for connecting us. And at this time, I would like to offer our closing remarks to Dean Benefiel.
Thank you. So much of what you said has resonated in so many different places and brought back so many memories. My only regret is that I'll put it this way. I'm hoping that this thing has 10,000 views on YouTube once we list it. Very, very powerful. I knew it would be a very emotional experience for me. I only know one person that died And I actually didn't know him. I knew his brother. And I was able to find his name on the list. And even what I knew about him, listening to the story and his description of him reminded me a lot of how you describe your brother, Anthony. And I thought, you know, a lot of good people died that day, but I'm really happy that their memories have been enshrined in a literal way in the new building. I've seen it. I've toured it a couple of times, and it's a great memory piece for us, and we'll be telling those stories long after we're gone. So thank you all for your participation. I hope that you continue to be active in our programs as alumni. We're always looking for alumni to do various things, and we will welcome your participation in any of those processes and programs. So on behalf of the school and your home, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was an
Thank you.
honor.
And enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Everyone,
You as well. Take care.
Thank you.
safe. Have a good
Thank
you,
evening,
Sharon.
everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you,
Be
Sharon.
well.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Bye-bye.